When I'd come back from Sri Lanka, I was told that PM साहब मिलना चाहते हैं. So I went there. Then he said, कल सुबह आ जाइएगा, नाश्ता इकट्ठा ही करेंगे और उसके बाद आपको राष्ट्रपति भवन ले जाएंगे, आपको शपथ दिलाएंगे और आपको मंत्रिमंडल में ले आएंगे. So I nearly fell off my chair. In a 39-year career, I think I still have a record of being the Indian who's served and chaired more dispute settlement panels under the World Trade Organization than anyone else. I've also dealt with hardcore issues of terrorism. I was the person who was sent to talk to Velupillai Prabhakaran, the LTT leader. The negotiating language always starts off, I want... For anyone to make the transition from holding an AK-47 to peace,
you stood up to some German boys who were troubling you about your turban.
If somebody is bullying you, give it back. There's been this old debate on which is a more worthwhile career, the IAS or the Foreign Service. Then I was Civil Aviation Minister. That was during the pandemic. We had to fly people in from different parts of the world. We were able to privatize Air India. Now, Petroleum and Natural Gas Minister of 3 years.
Petrol or oil, the conversation around EVs.
You have an excellent story to tell.
When you were in this position and unfortunately the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi happened, how did you feel then?
India has always believed in using diplomacy. We have never attacked any other country. But equally, if you are attacked, then you will... Dysfunctioning Security Council, a less than effective UN.
Why would you say that?
Today, everybody goes to war without any... And the Security Council is paralyzed.
We first met in the Ministry of External Affairs, fell very much in love. When he went to Jaffna, of course, I was very tense, walking through landmines and being guided by these guides from LTT, blindfolded through the jungles of Jaffna.
How does one make marriage last? Let's talk about the recent, you also made a comment on the Indo-Canada relationships and the kind of conversations that are going on. You were one of 4 ministers to get the students back home from Ukraine.
Operation Ganga.
Operation Ganga. What is the mindset of a person who has to apply himself in the context of negotiating situations which are extremely dangerous for our citizens? Welcome to Humans of Bombay, sir. Thank you so much for doing this and inviting us into your space. It's beautiful. Your library especially, I spent many moments there. So thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here.
Sir, so this is going to be a conversation where we get to know a little bit more about you, the human behind the persona that we see online. So I'll start with your childhood. So there is a बहुत ही दिलचस्प कहानी है कि you were 4 years old when you stood up to some German boys who were troubling you about your turban. And ये कहानी अक्सर इंटरनेट पे आती रहती है. So talk to us about that first incident that probably you remember in your life.
I went to a German kindergarten in what was then the capital of Federal Republic of Germany, Bonn. I got there because my father was in the Ministry of External Affairs. He was posted there. I was a little older than 4.
Okay.
Because all Sikh boys, they're not expected to cut their hair. So my hair was tied in a kind of a gut behind my thing. So the initial reaction of naughty German boys to seeing somebody who's a boy with long hair is sense of amusement, a little bit of taunting. And then, as is invariably the case, it results in a little bit of bullying. So anyone who suggests to you that they don't react adversely to bullying are wrong. I mean, different people maybe accept the bullying. I did. I accepted the bullying initially. Then I had a friend of my parents, she was a German lady, and I would come home from the kindergarten, upset. And so she asked me, what is the problem? So I explained to her. The second problem was also that the kids spoke German and I was very new. I didn't speak any German.
Right.
I mean, born in Delhi, Hindi, Punjabi at home and English a little bit. So one was a language problem, the other was a share, little kids like to bully other kids, so and so. So I think the turnaround time, if I can call it a turnaround time, was quick. I learned how to react to bullies. I think one or two people I kicked a little harder under the knees than I should have. But soon we had equilibrium. Then there was no longer a problem. But it served me also as something I reflect back on. I'd forgotten it, but you mentioned that it's probably hidden away somewhere on the net. But later in life, I had similar circumstances when I went to school in Delhi or elsewhere. But you can't call it bullying. People try to intimidate you, including on social media. You can be doing something completely professionally correct, and somebody will put a nasty comment in there.
Yeah.
But what about this? Which has nothing to do with that. Then you develop what I call as a politician, which is not a luxury, it is a necessity. You develop a thick skin. I mean, you get trolls coming after you. When you do something wrong, I think the right thing to do is to admit a mistake and say, well, we got this wrong and I'm sorry you were subjected to inconvenience or whatever. But when you know that it's no fault of yours, then I think you should respond. Of course, the nature of the response will vary from situation to situation. But also, I think in political life, since I am expanding on that, you have to be extra sensitive. If as a result of your action or some action which was taken by someone to be good to you and you inconvenience somebody else, I think you have to step in and correct that. I had such an instance recently on the way back from New York. I was suddenly told when I was walking up to the aircraft, I was told that we changed your seat from 1K to 1A.
Okay.
So I said, why did you do that? He said, because 1K wasn't reclining possibly or something like that. There's some problem with the seat. So I said, but what happens to the person who's sitting in 1A? He said, no, he's all right. He doesn't mind. I said, I don't buy that. Why would he not mind? If, because the first class cabin has only 4 seats.
Yeah.
And if somebody is listening, so no, he had got a ticket from Miles. So I said, no, I don't accept that. And so lo and behold, I happened to meet that gentleman when I was walking in. And he was not very happy. But I told him, I spoke to him, a good Sikh gentleman who settled in the United States. And I explained to him. He said, no, I don't want to inconvenience you. You're older than me. I said, no, I insist. That was your seat. You go back to that seat. And I traveled on a seat which was not properly reclining. So that you have to do as a politician. Because, I didn't do it because of social media. But if that person had taken to social media and said, they changed my seat and bumped me off into business class because they have wanted to accommodate a minister, they would have been right.
Yes.
So I wanted to correct that. Other than that, I think most of us find an equilibrium. If you are given to gaffes, if you're given to saying stupid things, you'll get trolled, no matter who you are.
Yeah.
Whether you are a media personality or a celebrity like you or anybody who says stupid things, come at you. But I think the name of the game here is to try and be correct and then work out your equilibrium.
Correct.
I must say I've been more fortunate than most because if you're able to read a situation correctly, if somebody is bullying you, give it back. Nobody can bully you. No, bullying is the action of somebody who he or she are using that dominant position to either make you feel not so good or put you down, etc. So that's a thing.
What was the rest of your childhood like, right? Like
I had a reasonably sheltered childhood, but my education was uneven because my father, being in the Ministry of External Affairs, went from place to place.
Correct.
So after a while, when my parents went on another posting to Indochina, to Laos, Vientiane, which was, a place where the schooling was not expectedly there, because Indochina then was war-torn.
Yeah.
And the international community had set up the International Commission for Supervision and Control, consisting of 3 countries, India, Canada, and Poland. So I was then left in Delhi and problem with some schools. But once I entered Delhi University, I had a regular education, 5 years. And I taught for a year at the University of Delhi in one of the colleges, St. Stephen's College. Other than that, I've had a pretty stable, sheltered sort of a childhood.
Yeah. I asked that question because, so much of what we encounter in our childhood and formative years ultimately leads us to make choices as adults. So did you always know that this is something that you want to pursue? Because diplomacy as a subject or as a career option wasn't what it is today when you chose to walk down that path.
No, I agree with you. No, coming from a lower middle class family or a middle class family, depending on how you define, the India of 1970, early 1970s was very different from the India of today.
Yeah.
You had very few private sector avenues for employment. If you were good academically, you could teach at one of the universities, colleges. And then everybody wanted to become a babu, a government servant, take the UPSC exam. I wanted to be in the foreign service because I knew a little bit about it by virtue of the fact that my parents had served. I mean, I had a childhood in Germany. When I got into the foreign service, I was a student at Delhi. My father was posted in the UK. In between, they were in Laos. So, I mean, there were different places. I wanted to be a diplomat. It struck me as a profession which, in retrospect, I think it was a good choice. But you had to qualify in an exam. There's no certainty of that.
Yeah.
Lakhs of people appear and only very few get in. In my batch, we had 25 qualified. In the IAS, another 100 qualified. But I think the choice was also partly dictated by what appeared to be doable. If I didn't have a middle class background, I may have preferred to be a lawyer.
Really?
And my father very often told me that, there's nobody in the family who has a legal practice. So you'll probably end up as a briefless lawyer, which is not to say that my father didn't have confidence in me. But I think what he was saying is that if you can qualify to get a good job, at least security.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're a lawyer, you may do very well, but it takes time to establish, a lot of time, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the employment avenues, when I was still a student in MA final, I appeared for an interview in one of the leading private sector companies. They came onto the campus. It was a campus recruitment. And I appeared half seriously. I mean, somebody said, oh, Hindustan Lever ke log aaye interview kar rahe hain, aap bhi le chale jaiye. So I said, so about 3 weeks earlier, we'd all given our names. Yeah. So since they'd given the names, I also appeared. And lo and behold, I got a call for the final round in Mumbai. And I got in. It's too good to be true. You're a student of final year MA history. You have taken the exam. You've taken the MA exam. The results haven't come. And you join the private sector. At 2.5 times what the government would have given you as a start. The start for an IAS, IFS also was 400 rupees basic salary. Here they started you at, I think, 1,000 rupees, if I remember correctly. So I'd spent a few weeks, 1 week in Mumbai, then Bombay. Then I was assigned to the Calcutta division in what was then called Main Lines 1. That was their main business lines, making dalda and, other, the detergents and so on. But 3 weeks into it, I started something I didn't do very much at that, is introspecting. I said, what would be my life at the age of 40? All right, if I'm a successful manager, I can say I have pushed up the sale of soaps by 40%, or pushed up this thing, but is that what I want to do? So the first opportunity I got into Delhi, I appeared for an interview at St. Stephen's College, and lo and behold, I got in. So I left Hindustan Lever. the terms of leaving were not entirely how they should have been, because they were a little shocked. How can somebody who's got into this very prestigious job and who's left?
It's coveted because
It's very
salary,
coveted,
yeah.
very coveted. And lo and behold, in that year, several of us left. I left it to join a teaching job. So they were a little, rightly so, wanting to know what happened. But I think slowly they realized it was not a problem with them. It was a problem with somebody at the age of 21 not being entirely clear on what they wanted to do. And I think the choice I made of coming back to the university, settling into a teaching job, and then joining the Foreign Service was a correct one. And I served in the Foreign Service for 39 years.
Yeah.
So that, I think, was the correct decision.
So as a young person who's just landed this job, which also comes with a lot more responsibility, right? Like when you're at a corporation or working at any company, the responsibility is hedged because you're responsible for your job, you do your job, you go home. However, with this, when it comes to diplomatic relationships, when it comes to representing your country, which you did, the responsibility is heavy. So what was your mindset going in? What is it that you wanted to achieve?
No, I think at that stage, it's still another job. It's slowly when you settle in, when you come into, the first few years are, probationary training in the country, then going on a language posting. And Lakshmi and I went to Tokyo to learn Japanese. We learned Japanese for a year or plus, then started working in the mission. They're too young, you're speaking. But after a while, you're right. After a while, you realize that it's not just another job. Whatever you do, you will be judged in terms of what you're doing for your country.
Correct.
I mean, if you're a trade officer, how are you reacting to that? If you're a political officer, how do you reach out? If you are a consular officer dealing with the passports and visas, how do you react? And as you grow older and as you get a little more experience, yes, that sense comes in.
Right.
Which is missing in the beginning because, you're just learning the ropes. There's been this old debate on which is more worthwhile career, the IAS or the Foreign Service.
That was the question.
Very, very often, a lot of people in the Foreign Service say, if we had been in the IAS, we would have been running a district, we would have been doing this, we would have been doing that. I don't buy that argument. No matter where you are, whether you're in the Revenue Service, the IAS or the Foreign Service, if you're serious about what you're doing, then you can rest assured that you will get results. And the Foreign Service, I think, lends itself for consideration as a very promising career because it gives you or any young person or anyone else dealing with it so many different avenues. You can deal with traditional diplomacy, foreign policy, security policy, trade policy, the works.
Yeah.
So I have had the privilege in a 39-year career of doing trade negotiations. I think I still have a record of sorts of being the Indian who's served and chaired more dispute settlement panels under the GATT and the World Trade Organization than anyone else. I've also dealt with hardcore issues of terrorism. Yeah. I was the person who was sent to talk to Velupillai Prabhakaran, the LTT leader. I brought him to India for talks with the then Prime Minister, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi. I chaired the Counter-Terrorism Committee of the UN Security Council. I have, the Foreign Service gave me an opportunity to deal with many areas. Today, when I deal with issues of energy and security, energy availability, affordability, again, somewhere my long innings in diplomacy would have come into an end. Of course, I'm very often heard saying that whatever you do is new, so you have to apply yourself. And some of these jobs don't give you too much apprenticeship time. You have to come to terms with the reality straight away. In the last this is the 8th year that I've been part of the Prime Minister's team. I did 7 years as Housing and Urban Affairs Minister. That's the time Kartavya Path was built. That's the time our metro system urban transport system increased. That's the time Parliament was built, Bharat Mandapam was built. Several the smart cities mission took off, the Swachhta mission, affordable housing, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. So it's a very exciting learning period, and if you can contribute a little to that, that's one. Then I was civil aviation minister. That was during the pandemic. We had to fly people in from different parts of the world. We were able to privatize Air India, which was a very big achievement. And now as energy, or rather petroleum and natural gas minister for 3 years, I've been dealing with the trilemma of energy availability, affordability, and sustainability. And I think whatever you do, there's a underlying fascinating challenge there. And I think a degree of satisfaction if you can do it reasonably well.
Yeah. But what is the mindset of a person who has to apply himself in the context of negotiating with a militant?
Well, my mindset better be one of total calm, because you don't want to, flap there. You must know whom you're dealing with.
Yeah.
I mean, the negotiating language always starts off, I want peace. But, their idea of peace may be very different from yours. So, I remember my negotiations with the LTT. It's all in the public domain. Submissions were made to the Jain Commission, which was set up to inquire into the assassination of the Prime Minister. So, all those things are there, and which part of the negotiations I did. But it's a real experience. Yeah, because the outcome of the negotiations, but you can't just say because I want a good outcome, I'm going to agree to what he's saying. Yeah. It's for anyone to make the transition from holding an AK-47 to peace is a very difficult transition to make.
Were you scared?
Well, not really scared, but unsure of yourself. But full of energy because you wanted to do it. But there was a time when, when you said, you discuss something, he or she, whichever one you're dealing with, I've dealt with many of them, agreed and then they went back on it.
Yeah.
Went back on it. So you then have a tendency for a fleeting moment to blame yourself. कि हमने तो गलती नहीं कर दी इसको, कहीं समझने की गलती नहीं हुई. But then I told myself, I was not alone with him. I had somebody with me all the time. And after every session, we produced notes. We sent those notes to our bosses and etc. So there is always a tendency. But then you discover that actually you did very well, because the gentleman you're talking to is actually has a history of, you say one thing today and go back on it tomorrow.
Yeah.
So, and then when that happens, then you become much more confident. A negotiation with non-state actors, particularly those who are known to use violence as a means of to meet their ends, it's not easy.
Yeah. When you were in this position and unfortunately the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi happened, how did you feel then? And
terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible. Any assassination.
Right.
But because, he was actually trying to bring about peace in Sri Lanka.
Correct.
He devoted himself to the 1987 India-Sri Lanka peace agreement was designed precisely for that. And after being out of power, he was coming back. And, when this human bomb,
Exploded.
He exploded. So everybody felt it. He was trying to wage peace and he died in that process, victim of a terror attack.
Yeah. So what did this entire period teach you that perhaps you still learn from? Because there's so many complex verticals under the same negotiation, right?
100%, you're 100% right, because and negotiations take place at different levels.
Yeah.
They take place between the intelligence agencies and the militant groups. They take place at political levels. And you also realize that you're only a small cog in the wheel. When I was sent there, it was an act of faith to send a first secretary in a mission to deal with somebody like Mr. Prabhakaran. But there was a history to it. There was a economic blockade of the Jaffna Peninsula.
Yeah.
And I was first sent when relief supplies came in boats from South India to there. And I was sent actually to supervise the distribution of relief material. But during that process, I made contact with the LTT on the ground. We already had contacts with them in India and it was something which was waiting to happen. After the first contacts in the Ghanam Hotel in Jaffna, after all that, one day I received a message, would you like to meet the Supreme Leader? So I said, as anyone should, I said, I'll check with my bosses. I'll have to check with the High Commissioner because my line of command was my High Commissioner. So I checked with him. He checked with Delhi and said, good idea, send him. That's how it started. But then afterward, the level was raised,
Yeah.
More senior people got involved. But yes, I had a vantage seat there in the beginning period. And I also saw it, at the end of it, it ended when after protestations and after saying that they wanted a peace settlement, they went back on it. And then there was a war which took place. I mean, was it good or bad? I don't know.
Yeah.
And you're not called upon to make those judgments.
Yeah. So how would you say India's posturing has changed over the years, right? You've seen diplomacy and represented India so closely.
No,
for
India has always believed in using diplomacy. And India has always believed in using diplomacy in order to secure peace, to go for negotiations rather than thing. We have never attacked any other country. If you look at ours, is an exemplary record. But equally, if you are attacked, then you will respond.
Yeah.
And I think we are very fortunate that today the traditional Indian approach to diplomacy is part of our cultural civilization also. I think if you read our literature on that, I mean, Kautilya's Arthashastra is a case in point. You read other. Today, I think the world has come to, by and large, the majority of the countries, the 193 member states of the UN, they have come to realize that India stands for, multilateral processes, global peace, and not for war.
Yeah.
That's been the Prime Minister's consistent stand when it comes either to the Russia-Ukraine issue. Whatever our individual degrees and levels of friendship with individual countries, but you have to peace. I mean, there should be no takers for war.
Correct.
But a dysfunctioning Security Council, a less than effective UN, is making it worse to that extent.
Why would you say that?
Because ideally the only agency in the world which has the designated authority to determine whether there is a threat to international peace and security is the UN Security Council. So if somebody is claiming that they are under threat, they should go to the Security Council. And the Security Council will make a determination. If they say, yes, there is a threat to peace, then they will authorize what is called all means necessary or the use of force. Today, everybody goes to war or whoever wants to go to war without any reference to the Security Council. And the Security Council is paralyzed after, the goings on in Libya and Syria. When we were on the council, I was presiding over the council. So today, the effectiveness of the multilateral instruments or the UN is much less.
So especially in your position, right? Like when you have to deal with, you were talking about earlier when people will have an opinion. Of course, also you hold a public office. For example, when the Russia-Ukraine war was going on and we were still importing oil from Russia, there was a lot of
We were importing
debate.
very little. We were importing very little at that point of time. But, our imports of oil, first of all, there have never been any sanctions on oil imports from Russia. There was only a price cap. And we are not entirely unhappy with the price cap. If I can import oil less expensively, I would. Today, we are importing a lot of oil because we have a very simple policy. We float a tender at the point of importation. Whoever sells us cheapest, we buy from them.
Right. And when these kind of conversations spark a debate, what is typically your response?
My response is to lay the facts out, let people realize what's happened, and then you find the problem goes away.
Yeah. Okay. And when it comes to more larger level debates, right? Especially in the context of petrol or oil, the conversation around EVs and switching to more sustainable, to more environmental friendly substitutes. What then is the context?
We have an excellent story to tell. Our biofuel blending has gone up from 1.5% in 2014 to nearly 16-17% now. We had a target of 20% blending by 2030. We brought it forward to 2025. Our use of gas in the energy mix, we want to take from 6 to 15%. Our story on green hydrogen, these are all success stories.
Yeah.
Some are evident, as in biofuels. We're already talking, I'm still saying, of what we would do to take biofuel blending beyond 20%. We started that conversation. Where, at any given point of time, some 66, 70 million people go to a petrol station to fill up every day. Yeah. And there's never been any shortage of petrol, diesel, or gas. Our prices are lower than the world. They've actually come down thanks to the far-sighted decisions of the Prime Minister. And finally, what is important is that we are also making that green transition with availability and affordability. And green hydrogen is also evolving. So I think we're doing well.
Yeah. So let's talk about the decision that got you here, right? To move from diplomacy into politics.
It came naturally.
Yeah.
I was associated with the ABVP. Associated, I'm choosing my words carefully, when I was in the university. I was active in student politics. And when I retired in 2013, I did some think tanking for a while. And then I was invited to join the Council of Ministers. I'd already become a member of the BJP. So I think it was not a decision that had to be made. It was, in a sense, part of a natural evolution which was taking place.
Yeah. There's an infamous story of you getting this call during breakfast to join the Council of Ministers.
No, I was called by the Prime Minister when I'd come back from Sri Lanka. I'd gone to Colombo for a meeting. I was told that the PM saab milna chahte hain. So I went there. So having a conversation with him. During the course of the conversation, he didn't say very much about my experience and all that. Then he said, "Kal subah aa jayega, नाश्ता इकट्ठा ही करेंगे और उसके बाद आपको राष्ट्रपति भवन ले जाएंगे, आपको शपथ दिलाएंगे और आपको मंत्रिमंडल में ले आएंगे." So I nearly fell off my chair. I mean, I knew I was associated. I had the privilege of knowing the Prime Minister. But then he said, "कोई बात नहीं, उसके बाद राज्यसभा में ले आएगा." So clear. Then he also told me किसी को बताना नहीं अभी. I said, नहीं, मैं लक्ष्मी को भी नहीं बताऊँ. नहीं, लक्ष्मी को बता देना. But by the time I went home, I got a call from Lakshmi. She said her sister had called her. She was in New York. She said sister had called her from Mumbai, and the ticker was saying so and so joining the Council of Ministers. Yeah.
Wow. So how did it go from?
No, it was a change. I mean, it was completely out of the blue. I mean, you could have said, since I was already appointed chairman of the RIS by the Honorable Prime Minister, then maybe it could have happened. But I had no knowledge it was going to happen at that point.
At that point. Yeah. And ever since, you've been involved in, again, things that require clarity of thought or decision making, like when you were one of 4 ministers to get the students back home from Ukraine.
Operation Ganga.
Operation Ganga. How then are you, operating with your years of experience in diplomacy to apply to real life and situations which are extremely dangerous for our citizens?
Well, frankly, it's a great privilege to be invited to be a part of the Prime Minister's team. Yeah. And I've had the enhanced privilege that 7 years I was Housing and Urban Affairs Minister, 2 years I was Commerce and I was MOS for Commerce and Industry, and I had the independent charge of Civil Aviation. And now 3 years I've been Petroleum and Natural Gas. So it's a fantastic opportunity for you to learn and to contribute.
Correct.
But it's a full-time job.
Yeah.
You end up working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week.
No offs.
No off.
Yeah. Let's talk about the recent, you also made a comment on the Indo-Canada relationships and, the kind of conversations that are going on. What is your opinion and the
I will
outlook?
not comment on that because this is a very sensitive subject which is being dealt with in terms of nuances by MEA.
Correct.
I had only made one comment which I will repeat to you because I think it's better that you speak to my colleague Jaishankarji. That, the physical security of our representatives, no matter how much of freedom, etc., but to allow pictures of the High Commissioner to be put on this thing and people taking shots at him, etc., allowing public servants to be attacked like that, it's not acceptable. This is against all canons of international law and propriety.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's evident from our conversations that you're still learning and
Oh, everybody is learning every day.
you're having fun
Be
learning.
be careful if anybody tells you that I know it all.
Yeah.
Then you've had it.
Yeah.
Then the problem is going to begin.
Yeah. So what are the biggest learnings that you've had in your entire career, which is so
No,
vibrant?
it's a you learn on a daily the issues, some of the problems that you have to face. They constitute learning, but the whole idea is to realize what your priorities are, realize what is good for the country, and realize how, if as effectively as possible, because you're a small cog in a big wheel.
Yeah.
There are other people contributing. How you can contribute to the nation first process.
Yeah. So what would your advice be to say the youth who's watching and is
I
on
would
a
say
different
I would
path?
say that whatever you do, whatever profession you choose, always remember that there were some people before us who struggle and whose sacrifices resulted in our getting the freedom in 1947.
Yeah.
I was born 5 years after we gained independence, but don't forget, if we had not gained our independence, we'd still be under colonial domination. And the youths today are the real labhartis or beneficiaries of what Viksit Bharat is going to be about. So they will be the real beneficiaries. Now, today you have $4 trillion economy. When you are Viksit Bharat 2047 will be a $40 trillion economy. Our per capita income will go up 6 times.
Yeah.
And the kind of, typical struggling developing country challenges which you had, they'll be a thing of the past. So they should then start preparing for it. And I think education and the development of appropriate skills, that is the answer to development.
Correct.
When somebody goes to buy property and they ask me, what should you be looking at? Everybody would say location, location, location. If you talk about what should you be looking at for development, I would say education, education, education. So they have the benefit of an explosion of knowledge. You can just at the press of a button find out from all the search engines the answers you're looking for. But it's more than just access to information. You have to use that information and you've got to dedicate yourself to a cause for your immediate family, for your state, for your country. That's the challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. Welcome, Lakshmi ma'am. We've been chatting for a while and now we were going to ask him questions about you. So we thought, why not have you? So that we can have both perspectives on this
Thank you.
conversation. So welcome and thank you for doing this with us.
Pleasure to be with your project.
Yeah. So you all were very young when you all met. And he had just joined the IFS when he first met you, and you've held so many different positions associated with the UN and just overall seemed like a power couple and so articulate. But talk to me about the time that you all first met and what it was like.
We first met in the Ministry of External Affairs the day that we were supposed to register ourselves as IFS officers. But we didn't really talk, and the real meeting took place in the Academy, National Academy of Administration in Missouri, So the real first meeting was quite a feisty encounter because we had just been told about our language allocations. I had been allotted German and he had been allotted Japanese, and we met at this place called the Tavern. It was a very popular uh, cafe. It used to have music, and we used to dance. All the probationers, as they were called, used to haunt that place. So we met there, and so he said, you shouldn't have got German because I have been in Germany as a child, and I had asked for German, and he had been given, but I've got Japanese and you've got German. So, I retorted, oh, then, you should have been
Should have been higher up in the
higher
batch
up. So, that banter we started with. And very soon we fell very much in love. And it was so fast that we didn't even realize that within 2 months of our meeting, we had almost taken the next step of deciding to get married.
How sweet.
So, and we were just 22. In fact, I became 22 a week after joining foreign service.
Wow.
So yeah, we were the youngest in the batch. So there was a lot of opposition from both families, but particularly from his family. My family got used to it very quickly. Once they knew that I was determined, and they had also, inter-regional marriages before in the family, so they were more open. But his family also came around because when they found out that he is very adamant on getting married. So that's how they came around, and then we got married in February. So between July of 74 to mid-February, we got married in 75.
Wow.
Yes, so that was the journey. And, when I look back, it was just sitaron ki gardish. Imagine we couldn't be more unlike in terms of our background, except that we were born and brought up in Delhi.
Yeah.
And although we were in the Delhi University, he was in the North Campus and I was in the South Campus. So we had never met before. So it was really something miraculous that we met and that we fell in love and that we got married.
Yeah. So how did you know she was the one?
Yeah, everybody was chasing her. I started by saying he is very fascinating, but then... No, but this is how is the one is not something that... if things have to work, they work fast. If they're going to take 5 years, then you're saying, are you in doubt? Then I think you're already in doubt. So I have two theories. One is that if things click, they can click very quickly. And even at 22, you are mature enough to make those determinations.
But he was always, he had a mature head on very young shoulders right from the beginning.
I know that's true, but maybe not. These are all relative things. But I think that the differences were also quite stark. Because let's face it, in her family there may have been the experience of, a Maratha girl marrying a Brahmin and
Saraswat
Brahmin and being thrown out of the family as a result. But there was that past history. But it all said and done, there is a difference in cultural values there. Whereas amongst the Punjabis, it is, if you're But I think the fact that there were education and educated families on both sides, I think after initial hesitation, which had nothing to do with different culture, my mother, for instance, felt that because she had been a embassy wife, and she said that, how will you manage? How will she manage? But by the time Lakshmi settled in, I mean, her ability to manage a home and combine it with a career, nobody had any doubts on that.
Yeah.
So that's one. The other thing is that I think if there is, along with what you want to get married, and then there is also the ability to take the decision. Ultimately, it has to be your decision. It's not an arranged marriage.
Yeah.
But the people on both sides of the equation came around very quickly. And I think I can say with confidence, for my parents, she was the daughter they didn't have, and equally with her parents.
With my parents.
But there was also an age difference.
Okay.
Her parents, when Lakshmi was
I was born when they were 45.
Oh, yeah.
So,
An unexpected last child.
so that, I think there was a lot of maturity there and unexpected. But once it was accepted, then there was, it's only the first few months, I would say, till the rest it falls into place.
Yeah. So how did you juggle both your careers? Because both were demanding. And as we were talking with Sir earlier, that he also had missions which were very uncertain, like when he was meeting with the LTTE head, and it's dangerous, right? So how were you coping with all aspects, which was your career, the home, and also the fact that your husband is on missions that are very uncertain and unstable?
See, when I joined the Foreign Service, I knew that it is not going to be easy to establish what is typically called a work-life balance. And I was fortunate to be a tandem couple. Many of my women colleagues, either they never got married, or if they got married, it was to IAS or to business people. So it's very difficult. It was very difficult for them to be together. But with Hardeep ji, I was privileged because we were a tandem couple, and the ministry was very good to us, to a large extent, to post us together as long as they could until we reached grade 4, ambassadorial, grade 3, which is the ambassadorial grade. And after that, it was not possible. So we then came back to India and stayed here for 6 years.
8 years.
No, you were 7. I came back, I think, 6 years. So, but yes, we have had separate postings. We have had difficult postings, and we were, really inured to not only survive but try and thrive in those postings, to maintain that connection. Yes, those were not, especially some of the earlier years, were not years where you had the same kind of communication, video calls and emails even.
It was far harder.
You had to write letters. We used to write letters. So, it was a different kind of world, but you adapted to it. In fact, the most difficult was when he was in Brazil and I was in Geneva, because the distance it was not so easy to travel, even to communicate. We started buying those cards, telephone cards. I don't know whether you are in that generation that you remember, but we used to buy these cards to be able to speak once in a week or so. So, it's been difficult. It's been difficult for our 2 daughters because they've had to move from place to place. And in fact, at one point, my younger daughter gave us notice and said, after I was in ambassador in Budapest and he was in London, and she felt very deprived of her father's, love and company. And so she would blame me for it. And so she said, after this, I want both of you to be under the same roof. Otherwise, so she threatened. So then I said, okay, after this, I'll take a year's leave. And so when he went as ambassador to Geneva, I took a year's leave. And meanwhile, of course, then, destiny had something else set out for me. So I joined the UN in Geneva. So that enabled us also to remain, together. But yes, these are, his being alone in Brazil was very tough.
But if you look at an overall career ahead of 39 years, if I look at the number of years
we were together.
It's the majority of the time.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, the first posting when we were ambassadors, I went to London, she went to Budapest. I was Deputy High Commissioner. Well, that was
I think about 10 years we were apart.
3 years there, then Brazil 2.5 years, 5.5 years. And maybe the year that I came back earlier to Delhi.
Yes.
6.5, 7 years. Not
No,
more.
but also in New York.
New York.
After you retired.
And no, I'm talking about my 39
During your
Yeah.
39 years.
So it's not bad. Out of 39 years, if you're 7 years, you're in different posts.
Yeah.
So it's pretty good. I mean, so the system has been not only responsive but positive also.
So did distance make the heart grow fonder?
Well, we are going to be completing 50 years.
Wow.
So
Next year.
next year. So no, I think yes. I mean, a short answer is yes.
Okay.
But there is also something to be said for companionship. You see, relationships to last that long, you're not just in a marriage. Then there has to be compatibility based on companionship and respect. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Because, there are so many, I mean, if you're busy in somewhere, you're working all the time, then you'll say, well, what the hell, it does not. But I know even when I was in Brazil, I think many times she visited me. My elder daughter used to come down when I presented my credentials. She came, etc. So family adjusts to those situations.
Right.
And if you're able to do it, then you can, time passes more quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And how have you both helped each other in your careers? Because obviously they're so different, but there's so much synergy as well,
Absolutely.
right?
You were right. When he went to Jaffna, in fact, I was expecting my second baby. So, of course, I was very tense until he returned, safe and sound, walking through landmines, and being guided by these teenage guides from LTT, driven blindfolded through the jungles of Jaffna. So all of that, of course, was, causing concern. But thankfully, it turned out all well. And it was a heroic act on his part, and what he did for the country. In fact, at that time, there was even a proposal that our High Commissioner had made to give him a Kirti Chakra.
I had to go and lobby against it.
To not get it. So how did life change? He was just telling us that your sister called you from New York and said there's this sticker on the news channels that he's been appointed to the Council of Ministers. How did life change after this massive change and position in his life as a family?
Well, the daughters had already left the nest long ago, and they were settled in their own lives. So for them, it wasn't that much of a change, except they were very happy for him because, as I was, because he has been all the time wanting to join politics, to be in this public service space. So I was happy that finally he had reached this destination, and he had been honored by Prime Minister Modi, and also delighted with this rather unusual portfolio for a foreign service officer. There have been foreign service officers who have been ministers, but this is the first time I think that urban development and housing and urban development was given to a former foreign service officer. So I had personally, professionally had worked on urban development issues. So I was very excited that, he will have an opportunity to do something which is so important for the development of India. So I think it has so much has changed for me, but I'm quite enjoying it, and I follow politics. I'm not involved in politics.
More passionately than I do.
Only follow. I want to draw a distinction. I don't practice, or I'm not involved, except when he stood for elections from Amritsar, and then I was campaigning day and night with him and for him and for the country. So that is, whenever I'm called upon to play any role politically, I do, but otherwise I'm content to support him in whichever way I can.
Yeah, okay. Last two questions, and since we're speaking about support, so we would love if you would talk about ma'am's book. I know she can speak about the book she's authored.
No, I'd be happy to do that. I'd be happy to. This is a book that was waiting to be written. And if I may be allowed, the original project was even more ambitious. If I recall correctly, based on recollection, what she had in mind was a magnum opus which dealt with the story around her mother, which is this book, then herself, and then our elder daughter.
Wow. So generations.
Yeah. And she started talking about it, I think, conceptualizing it. But if you're a serious professional, then the amount of time you actually get to write is somewhat disconnected from what is going on in your mind. You have to sit down and, put it down on paper. She wrote the entire book on the iPhone.
What?
Yes.
No, I'm just coming to that. So
2020.
I think the first couple of 100 pages were written many years ago. But then
in Budapest.
In Budapest when she was ambassador. Now that, and then being an ambassador for the first time, facing challenges, dealing with hardcore events in part of your career, etc. But then came the pandemic and COVID. She was locked in, and she was a very disciplined person in the sense she didn't suffer. She finished her book in one go after that.
Wow.
1 year.
1 year.
Okay.
270,000 words.
Wow.
So the book originally, as I said, if you take a starting date is when she was ambassador in Budapest, which is 2002. But the book didn't take between 2002 and 2024. The book didn't take 22 years. The book actually got written in 1 year, which is the COVID years. And then I think the first draft was about 400,000.
No, 270,000.
270, which you
cut down to 150,000.
Because the editor, she had a very good editor. David was of the view that,
David Davida.
So that, it should be. So, the rest is history. It's now got critical acclaim. It's been widely touted as one of the most promising novels, pieces of writing in that genre of fiction. And it's making waves. But the writing of the, it's a very different kind of fiction also. Whilst it's anchored very much in the lives of our parents, it's also, it evokes, conjures the period flavor. As a young girl, her mother in where she was born, Ratnagiri, goes to an orphanage in Ahilyabai Ashram in Indore, then goes on to Elphinstone College, Mumbai. Then the mother and her elder sister are the first postgraduates in India. And now the father gets thrown out of the house because he's going to marry a Maratha. And she gets a job in Banaras Hindu University in order to earn so that she can support her husband-to-be.
Wow.
So in many ways, it's a feminist novel also. So I would say that the writing itself may have been compressed there, but the story and the um, flavor given to that writing, it was been around for a long time, but then she was able to compress it. And every day she was on the iPhone, and then they would send it printouts and do it. But I'm encouraging her now that at least now she's very active and events related to the book, the launches and the discussions, other you know uh, translation in Marathi and Telugu are coming out.
This book is about swallowing the sun.
Yeah.
Is taken from Muktabai's Abhang.
Yeah.
Mungi udali akashi tine gille suryashi. So that spirit of achieving the impossible, no matter what, and overcoming the limitations of one's circumstance, daring to do, having faith, persisting. I think that's the spirit the women characters show. Malti, the one character inspired by my mother, and there are some other wonderful women characters as well who dare.
Yeah.
And then there are the men characters who are uncharacteristic for those times. They also rise above their patriarchal conditioning and are women respecting and affirming.
I'm very excited to read it. I have a last question for you. How does one make marriage last? Because especially now with Gen Z, like you all know, there's so many options, and it's just not what it used to be. So what is the secret sauce?
I don't think it is a challenge which is any different today than what it was earlier. I think the real challenge is accommodation, understanding, and deriving strength from it. We were not the first tandem couple in the Foreign Service. They were there before us also. And there are several after us, even the younger generation. But if you realize the positives, one is that there has to be compatibility. If people are uncomfortable in marriage, it's a different thing. But today, this current world of falling in and out of marriages and
and relationships.
I'm coming to that. It's not just marriage. The people are coming in and out of relationship.
Yeah.
Now, if you are in that mode, then my advice is don't get married. Because marriage is something more than that. Because you are raising a family, there's a value system, and there has to be
commitment.
And commitment. Now, commitment, sometimes people think is, oh my God, I have to commit myself. Well, if you've got commitment phobia, you've got a problem of a different kind. But if you think something is good, what is the hesitation in making a commitment?
Yeah.
And also, there's nothing as an ideal. There will be things on the professional front. If both are working, one will say, yeah, I'm getting a little this thing. But look at the advantages. Look at the positives. So, my own view is that I have many friends who've been in marriages for a long period of time. I have also a few friends whose approach to marriage is somewhat different. But I think there's great value in this kind of commitment and dedication, because I think it also insulates you from a lot of uncertainties. I mean, a lot of people don't get married. Their aging processes are different. Their responses are different. I'm not referring to any one set of circumstances. But you said what makes it last? I think it's something inside you.
I would add to that and also invoke something that is in this book. I think what is very important is to believe in love. This is an epic love story.
Yeah.
And I wanted to bring back that something elusive called love into the psyche of the modern generation also.
Yeah.
Gen Z.
Gen Z.
Yeah, because if you don't believe,
then you are going to be a cynic.
Then you're going to be a cynic, and you're going to be transactional, whether physical transactional, physical transaction or otherwise. On the other hand, love is about, as Hardeep said, it's physical, but it's also very much intellectual, compatibility, and you just stick with each other. You may have different points of view, but you
even
enjoy
in a
that dispute.
solid marriage,
Yes.
which is one 50, 60 years
Yeah.
old. Somebody I
we
look
hold-
up to.
Yes,
They're celebrating his 60th birthday. They have differences.
Yeah.
But differences you'll have with anyone. You have differences with yourself.
Yeah.
I do something today, I'll say, oh my God, I messed this one up. I should have
Yeah.
applied my mind. That's honest. That's
And
honest.
yes, and I think trust
Yeah.
is very important.
Trust is fundamental.
Trust is fundamental. And also, I think, we regard ourselves as soulmates in so many ways, and we have telepathy.
Yeah.
Before I say something, he already anticipates it. And when and the triggers, when we see something on television, there's some piece of news. Before he can say something, I will react to it exactly as he would, and vice versa. So sometimes, we are taken aback. How does this happen? So, in fact, you develop a certain telepathy, which again is, as you said, one of the key ingredients of that secret sauce.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
I'll give you a small example. She was with UNCTAD, and I was, I think, ambassador in Geneva. We had gone for UNCTAD 12 in Rio. Rio or Sao Paulo, I don't know. And she said she was going to a Cristalina shop and do some shopping. I also went at a different time. Both of us bought identical birds in terms of color combination. One slightly smaller than the other.
On two separate shopping trips.
No,
Completely.
we were by ourselves. It's something that, you didn't discuss. I didn't even know that she was going there. We ended up buying a bird, and in fact, we will show them the photograph of that.
Yeah, we'll see it.
Yeah, so these are things. I mean, you start, they say a husband and wife after many years start behaving like siblings.
Yeah. Okay, that's so beautiful. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you,
our
thank
segment.
you, thank
And I hope many people are inspired by love. With
I hope so.
Absolutely.
And 50 years, so yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
you.
Thank you.
If you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon. Thank you all for being the best community, and I'll see you soon.